Speaking out on the instability surrounding the featherweight title picture, Ariel Helwani said, "Yeah, it's messy right now. Moses Evolve deserves the opportunity, according to the majority of supporters. Although the man is unbeaten, has defeated elite opponents and consistently demonstrates his rightful place at the top, his most recent tweet implies he will not be receiving the title fight, which leaves us with the possibility of a rematch between Yair and Volk. Let's not mince words. Volk's initial run into Yair wasn't close, and it's most definitely not the altercation that fans are hoping for." Ariel had a good suggestion. Let Volk battle Mozar and Pitya against Diego Lopez. It makes sense to keep things simple and clean, but will the UFC follow through? Let's briefly discuss Mozar Evloev. The guy has done everything correctly, despite the fact that his style isn't the most amusing. He is unbeaten. He defeated former champion Aljamain Sterling, defeated Arnold Allen, and outclassed Diego Lopez, who was thought to be the one who would unseat Volkanovski. Nevertheless, Mozar continues to be overlooked. No hype, no promotions, just victories. And he's being excluded from the discussion now that the title is so obvious. At 145, the English fighter poses a threat to any.
Even though he may not be the biggest name, even though he may not be the most popular fighter, may not have the most exciting style, Volk has not and has never shied away from any of this. Maybe it's because he's a fighting champion, he's just that kind of guy, or maybe because there was once a time where he was in a spot where, people weren't banging the drum to fight him. There's a bunch of just like really fascinating mysteries just sort of percolating in the air right now. I wonder if it'll be Volk sitting. I wonder if they put Yair versus Diego Lopez on that card. That's the one that I thought should be on Noche UFC for all of this, right? I thought regardless of what happened in Miami, Diego wins, Diego loses, Yair wins, Yair, that's the fight to make. It ended up being, of course, Diego losing, Yair wins. That's the fight to make.
Of course. The heat between them.
So good.
The tie.
And it makes sense.
The Mexico.
Yair's on a one-fight winning streak. Diego just fought for the belt. It makes sense. The reports seem to indicate that it's going to be Mozar versus Aaron Pico. I don't think it necessarily means it's going to be Yair versus Volk.
Ahead of his fight against Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 319, Dricus Du Plessis recently given us a glimpse of the kind of brutal training routine he follows, and it's crazy. DDP claims that he never rests. He never takes a week off or relaxes. Even after a bout, he returns to the gym the next day. He acknowledges that he is so focused on winning and what comes next that he no longer even stops to savor his successes. The problem is that he dislikes this, but it only demonstrates how enmeshed he is. When preparing to take on a monster, like Khamzat Driz, you need to have a mindset that involves not only physical preparation, but also mentally residing in the battle all the time. That adds even more excitement to this matchup. Although Khamzat has a reputation for shattering people, DDP is not the kind of person to give up easily. He is uncomfortable, obsessive, and insistent, which may be why Khamzat finds him threatening. He's been waiting for this moment. Here he demonstrates that he is more than simply a candidate. He is the future, despite all the chatter and hype. This is his chance to win a title, and ultimately...
You get these guys, a lot of guys do this. So they'll fight, they'll take off for a month. And sometimes even longer. I can't do that. Like taking off for a month, I will forget how to do what I do. And what am I going to do for that whole month? So it's less intense. I'll take off however long I need. Sometimes, mostly, I'll fight this Saturday, Sunday. Next day, I'll at least go for a run. If
the next day,
I mean,
subject to injury, of course.
Yeah. If you're not injured, because if you do this your whole life, I've been fighting professional now since I was 19 years old. It's the only job I've ever had. So what else am I going to do? It's what I know. It makes me feel good to train. Especially after a fight, you immediately start thinking about what you could have done better, the things you can improve on, and then you want to start working. But it's very important to take that break. Once you get that obsessed, you start, and you just want to go, you start not appreciating the wins as much. And I find that being more devastating than anything, because then you're just thinking about what's next.
If you know anything about Ilia Topuria, you know that Spanish MMA journalist Alvaro Canero is the one with the inside scoop. He released all of Topuria's fight details weeks before they were formally announced, and he even revealed that Ilia had resigned his featherweight title and changed his moniker from El Matador to Leyenda. The point again is that this man is very familiar with Ilia or his camp, and what he just revealed on his Twitch livestream had fans talking. Calvaro claims that during a sparring session, Ilia defeated Khamzat Chimaev Ilia Topuria, and I have proof that she did so. Yes, you read correctly, that clip went viral. Some fans are getting excited about Ilia as if he just defeated Khamzat. In a main event, while others are not so much, the majority of them say, relax, it's just sparring, it doesn't really count. John McCarthy and Josh Thompson even devoted a full 30 minutes of their show to discussing this topic. Sometimes you let them get those moments in. You give them a chance to work, Big John added when he sparred with a smaller man. Perhaps you allowed them to defeat you so they could improve. Alvaro is once again the first on the scene, but Ilia's defeat of Khamzat, whether genuine or gifted, has the MMA community talking.
Look and you go, them training together. Of course it makes sense. Iron sharpens iron or it breaks iron. It either sharpens or breaks depending upon who you're training with and how that training is going. Obviously, Chimaev is a bigger human being than Topuria. Okay, here's a guy that cuts down to 185 or was cutting all the way down to 170. He's bigger, but training is training. And again, all kinds of things happen in training, and you can train with a smaller fighter if you're the bigger guy, as long as you don't lose your mind. You've got to hold yourself back in certain areas. Don't put as much pressure as you can at certain times, because you got to say, hey, I've got to give space and I got to do things to let this person who's a little bit smaller than me, I got to give them a chance to work and do what we're flowing through or whatever. But it makes sense. It makes sense that they both, kind of congregated towards each other, their backgrounds, everything.
On a recent episode of Funky and the Champ with Ben Askren, Daniel Cormier expressed his disapproval of the notion that John Jones would retire without taking on Tom Aspinall. Jones's attitude was dismantled by DC, who also made it apparent that John's ego would not allow him to leave without resolving his differences with Aspinall. According to DC, Jones would be more offended by the image of him not battling Tom and by people assuming he bolted. Despite the possibility that Aspinall poses a significant threat, he feels John is more concerned with his reputation than with minimizing danger. DC believes Jones will continue to fight because he secretly needs to establish his superiority.